All right, here we see the results from our search with two key terms of low self-control, and violent. If we look at the search results up the top here, we see that there is a total of 703,000 plus articles, books, etc. that were pulled up by these two key terms of self-control and violent. Now, this is pretty common when you conduct a literature search, is that you get too much. And of course, you don't have time, I don't have time to go through 700,000 articles. So we've got to narrow it down because a keyword search just pulls in any articles out of anything that mentioned self-control and violent behavior. So it's going to include a lot of stuff that you're not really interested in, that's not really relevant. You can see that this first one here, the title of this first article that pops up, Vulnerability versus Opportunity, Dissecting the Role of Low Self-Control and Risky Lifestyles in Violent, and here's a key term right here, victimization risk among Korean inmates. So it's not really what we're after, because violent victimization means it's not about attacking somebody, it's about being the victim of an attack. And we're interested in why people act violently, and if it has to do with self-control, not why people become victims of violence. So that's not really relevant. And there's a lot of studies in here that are not. So there's a couple of tricks that you can use. It's pretty typical to get way too many studies. A couple tricks that you can use to narrow it down so you don't have to look at all of these. You see over here on the left that there's a couple of options here. You can see that you can ask for full text, meaning that some of these papers that are listed here, you can look at the title, and you can look at a brief little summary of the paper, but you can't actually look at the full paper because it's not available through the library. Some papers are just not available through the library because the library has to pay money to subscribe to the journals, and we only have so much money, so we're sort of selective in what we pay for. But you can get summaries of studies. But really the proper way to do a literature search is to look at the full study, the full paper, which is, typically, it depends, 10, 20, 30, 40 pages, can get pretty long. But anyway, that's the proper way, is to look at articles where you have the entire paper. So you could click on that box and say you want full text articles. Don't show me any abstracts, any short little summaries where I can't look at the whole paper, because that's not going to do me any good. So you can ask for full text, and you can see that it did shrink it down a little bit, but we still have, of course, way too many. Another thing you can do is you can ask for scholarly journals, which most professors, if you're going to write a paper in a course or do any sort of research, you want to focus on the scholarly studies, not those that, some opinion piece that comes from a magazine or a newspaper analysis or something like that. That's not scholarly. You don't want to go to somebody's blog and get their take on violence. You want to rely on these scholarly studies, and typically scholarly means that they are peer-reviewed. And what peer-reviewed means is that before these papers are ever published and are made available to the public, they have to go through sort of an approval process where other experts on this topic of violence, sticking with this example here, some violence experts look at the paper, suggest changes, criticize it, say, well, you really ought to do this a little differently, you ought to change that and tweak this and that and the other. And so you have to go through, it's usually 3, 4, 5 people who are experts, and you have to get the green light from them before you can go ahead and publish the paper. And maybe you're going to have to make a bunch of changes before you get the approval from them. So it's a vetting process where hopefully you're getting the best quality sorts of research and studies, not just anything. So that's why professors in your classes will typically say, well, you need to give me scholarly articles, peer-reviewed ones, and don't go to Wikipedia, and don't go, that sort of thing. Don't go to the newspapers and that kind of stuff. They want these peer-reviewed studies. Now you see, look, that cut it down quite a bit. But when we said, hey, we only want scholarly ones, now we're down to 46,000. So that's dropping a big chunk, but it's still way more than what we want. So one good strategy I follow is I try to get a good relevant paper that's as new as possible. Maybe, if you can find one from 2020, that would be great, because that paper, if it's relevant, if it's on this topic of self-control and violent behavior, it's going to be cutting edge. It's going to guide. It'll help guide you and teach you what is known in the field up to the current present day. So it should be current. If you get some article from 1950, well, that's fine, but it's not really going to tell you everything that's been done since 1950. And so what you can do again to narrow this down is you can say, hey, you see this bar here? You can say, hey, this goes all the way back to 1818. I don't want stuff from that long ago. Give me the new stuff. So you can move this bar and take it all the way up to, let's take it up to, see how far it'll go. Let's say 2010 just to get it started. So there we're looking from 2010 to 2020. We go ahead and do that, and it's updating. And we see that it's cut that down in about half to about 22,000. So it'd be nice if we could even get it to go further. Let's try again. Still got way too many to look at. Let's take it up to just the last couple years. Let's do 2019 and 2020. And it should update. It doesn't seem to want to do this. It's supposed to be kind of an automatic thing once you move that. Okay, updating. Just the last couple years. Okay, we still got a lot, because nowadays there's a tremendous amount of research done. So even the last couple of years, you've got 2,400 studies. So you got a lot. But anyway, you could, I suppose, if you wanted to, again, you could just say, okay, what do we got for 2020? That's pretty recent stuff. And I don't even know if it'll let me do that. It doesn't want to move. But anyway, so your goal here is you want to try to narrow down as much as you can. And then you see, well, then you just have to start at this point here is you have to start weeding through stuff, reading titles and seeing whether it sounds relevant or not. And you just only want studies that look like that appear to be examining the relationship between low self-control and violent behavior, not victimization. We see this study here as, again, being a victim of crime. That's not what this study is about. We're talking about committing crimes. Okay, paper number 2 here, religiosity. Well, that's not really what we're interested in. Another thing you can do to narrow is you can come up here to the keyword, because what a keyword search does is if the articles, anywhere in the articles, say self-control and violent, you're just going to pull them up. But we want papers that are about, the central themes of the papers are low self-control and violent behavior. And so you can narrow that down more, and you can narrow it substantially. If instead of asking for the key term, we come up here to the keyword, instead of asking for keywords, we ask for title, which means that I'm interested in articles only that have self-control and violent in those two terms in the actual title itself, because that's a strategy of getting to papers that are probably going to be specifically about self-control and violent behavior. So I ask for title as opposed to key terms. So these words have to appear in the title, not anywhere in the article, but specifically in the title of the article. Do a search. Oh, look at that. Can you believe it? We got down to one article, right? Which is this, after hundreds of thousands, is pretty narrow. But it looks like it didn't quite work, because violent, this is the one we were looking at before. Yes, you've got self-control. Yes, you got violent, but it's about victimization. So this cut out too many, and took us too far down to one that we didn't even, is not really relevant. So let's go back to where we were. Again, not every strategy works. You just have to try and see what works. Okay, it's processing here. It's slow. It's got to go, it's searching a lot of articles. Okay, so we're back up to 2,400. So, So again, it's a process of going through, and you say, okay, now let's see, self-control, talking about morality too, so that's a little bit different. Comparison of property crime and violent offending. Now that's right, because here we're talking about offending, that committing the violence, not being a victim of it. It's a sample of juvenile delinquents, and it looks like it's looking at gender too. Okay, well that's, it looks like that's a pretty good one. Let's maybe come back to that one because it's kind of, dealing with more than one thing here. Okay, self-control on that one, but where's the violence, violent offending, but it's not talking about self-control. It doesn't look to be, you're looking only for a handful of articles that are fairly new, that are on that topic that you're looking for. Okay, here's a healthcare thing. That doesn't seem to be what we're talking about. Okay, this is dealing with kind of control, self-control, effortful control, but where's the violence? Okay, I'm still not seeing it. Criminal differences, so it's not really focusing so much on violence, but just crime in general. Social skills, that's a little bit different. We're talking about self-control here. See, so you got a lot of articles. This search process is a lot of weeding out. So if we were to go back up to this one about, that's got a few other things in it. It is new. 2019 is new. Now you say, well, that's last year, but research is very slow. So if it's in the past few years, that's pretty good. If it's the last couple of years, that's actually really good. Now, you see here that there's this little button that says Find at ISU. These other studies that have this linked full text, they're a little easier to get to, but hopefully we can click on this button and we could find this one somewhere in the library. And you can see it's taking its time coming up. See this, when we have this find it at ISU, it's a little more trouble because it's not in an easily accessible place. See, we are unable to process your search. So again, it's sort of a lead that doesn't really pan out. So going back through here again, your first goal here really is to try to find one study that's fairly new that seems to be dead on, because that will help guide you with the rest of your search once you can find really one good paper. And again, I'm kind of going through things, I'm scanning and going through things here quickly. Again, you see self-control, but it's about victimization, being bullied. And we're not studying being a victim, we're studying about being the bully, being the violent one. Okay, dual pathway linking self-control skills to aggression in adolescence. And so this one's, aggression is related to violence, but there's certain types of aggression that are not physical. You could be verbally aggressive. And so that's close, but it's still not exactly what we're looking for. There's another aggression one. Criminal propensity and violence. That's, again, triality of strain, self-control eating disorder, that's something different. Violent offending, but then I don't see self-control. And then we're looking at self-control between police officers and offenders. That sounds interesting to me, but again, it's not really what we're after. So anyway, this is what you do is you go, continue to go through this list of, and it can be quite a long list of studies until you find one that looks like it's right on target of what you're looking for. And so I don't want to keep you guys sitting, all day long sitting here and watching me find a study. We'll take a break. I'll find a study, and then we'll go from there, all right? See you in a minute.